very good morning to all the children who are present for the Class 7 Social Science lesson today. Today, we will be doing a lesson-wise summary of all the historical events, key points to remember in civics, and continent-based geographical facts as part of our FA3 lesson revision. The lessons that we have studied for FA3 are: in history, we studied Lesson 1, Advent of the Europeans to India. Lesson 2, Rise of British Political Supremacy in India. Then as part of our civics lesson, we studied about our defense forces of India. And for geography, we studied about Australia, the flattest continent, and we learned why it is known or called as the flattest continent. In the first history lesson in the Part 2 textbook, we listed all the early activities of the Europeans in India. From the time Vasco da Gama sailed into the port of Calicut and he discovered the sea route to India, from then on we have learned about all the trade routes to India and about the European settlements in India by the Portuguese, the Dutch, the English and the French. We also explained and were able to understand the conflict that emerged between Europeans and Indians. We listed all the European companies that came to India, and the British East India Company is still remembered by us till date. We also discussed the conditions that enabled the British to settle down in India, and we were able to locate all the European trade settlements, and this is shown even in this page. The Dutch trade routes, the Portuguese trade routes, and the English trade routes, and all the historical events that contributed to it. Then in history lesson 2, we studied about the rise of British political supremacy in India. We studied how the British were able to consolidate their power in India, and we all studied about the famous Battle of Plassey. How did the Battle of Plassey take place? What were the factors responsible and what were the causes for the Battle of Plassey? We also were discussed about the Battle of the Buxar and also the causes and results of the Carnatic Wars. In this lesson, these are the important topics that we had learned: the Battle of Plassey, the Battle of Buxar, the Carnatic Wars, subsidiary alliance, and the policy of doctrine of lapse. We know that the subsidiary alliance was initiated by Lord Wellesley and the policy of doctrine of lapse by Lord Dalhousie. Then we proceeded to learning about the defense forces of India in civics. We learned about the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force. And we also studied about all other paramilitary organizations in our country. We studied about how defense is very responsible for protecting the country from internal conflicts and also from foreign aggression. So we studied the important role played by the defense forces in our country. And we have already commemorated Indian Armed Forces Flag Day on December 7th. And these were other functions that the defense forces play a very important role, and we need to remember all the important functions played by each of the defense forces. We studied about the headquarters, the military ranks, and various other roles and responsibilities of our defense forces. In geography, we have learned about Australia and why it is called as the flattest continent. We were able to locate Australia on the world map, and these are some of the landmarks of Australia in just an introduction to the lesson. We also looked at all the landforms and the physiography of Australia, and we learned about how to locate them on the physical map of Australia, prominently the Great Victoria Desert, Great Dividing Range, Gulf of Carpentaria. Then we also studied about the plant life and the animal life of Australia. We studied about the minerals and industries in Australia and how is mining a very important industry in Australia. We studied about important Australian cities like Sydney, Alice Springs, and Canberra. Canberra is also called as the capital of Australia because it includes many important buildings like the Parliament House. So that was all that we have studied in our for FA3 in social science. And we need to read the lessons that are given in the Part 2 social science textbook first before we revise all our classwork notes. We then need to revise all our lesson-wise class tests that were given and with the answers corrected and given to us. We also need to study all the fill in the blanks, match the following questions and answers, and map work that was given in the notebook. We need to study short answer questions, answer in one to so two sentences, long answer questions, and how to answer them correctly with the help of points. So we need to write point wise when we write the answers in the test. We also learned how to practice drawing the correct outline map of Australia with the help of a sharpened pencil.